Jack Rivers knew the road like the back of his hand. Every twist, every turn, every bump was etched into his memory. He'd been a trucker for 20 years, crisscrossing the country countless times. From the sun-baked highways of Arizona to the icy roads of Maine, he had seen it all. This Christmas Eve was no different. He was hauling a load of electronics from Nebraska to Colorado. The cargo was valuable, and the deadline was tight. Snow fell steadily, blanketing the highway in white. It was the kind of night that made you feel small and insignificant. The kind of night that made you question your place in the universe, alone. Jack wasn't bothered by the solitude. He enjoyed the hum of his engine and the crackle of his CB radio. The solitude gave him time to think, to reflect on his life and the choices he had made. He liked his own company. He liked the open road. The freedom it offered was unparalleled. No bosses, no deadlines, just him and the endless stretch of asphalt. But tonight felt different. An unnatural stillness hung in the air, broken only by the mournful whistle of the wind. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. It was getting late, and Jack was starting to think about finding a place to park for the night. The snow was getting heavier, and visibility was dropping fast. That's when he saw her. A lone figure in a red coat standing by the side of the road. She seemed out of place, like a ghost from another time. The woman's back was to him. She was just a splash of crimson against the stark white landscape. Jack's gut told him to keep driving. Something about her felt off. But it was Christmas Eve, and the thought of leaving someone stranded in this weather gnawed at his conscience. He sighed, pulling his rig over to the shoulder. The woman turned, her face hidden in the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. She was young, he could tell that much, and she was carrying a small, worn suitcase. "Need a lift?" Jack called out his window, his voice gruff but kind. The woman just nodded, her face still obscured. She climbed into the cab, bringing with her a chill that seemed to seep right through Jack's heavy jacket. As soon as she sat down, Jack knew something was wrong. It wasn't just the way she looked, but the air around her seemed to change, growing colder and more oppressive. Really wrong. The woman emanated an unnatural cold. It was as if she carried winter with her, a chill that seeped into Jack's bones. It was like stepping into a freezer. He tried to make small talk, asking her where she was headed, hoping to break the ice, literally and figuratively. But the woman remained silent, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Her eyes were unblinking, almost as if she was in a trance. "You okay?" Jack finally asked, his voice tight with unease. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, each beat echoing in the silence. The woman slowly turned her head towards him. Her face was pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow and dark. It was like looking at a ghost. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It was like watching a silent film. Jack strained to hear, but there was nothing, just the eerie quiet of the night. A shiver ran down Jack's spine. He'd never been one for superstition, but there was something deeply unsettling about his passenger. It felt like he was in the presence of something otherworldly. The silence stretched on, each passing mile amplifying the tension in the cab. Jack's mind raced with questions, but he was too afraid to ask. Jack wished he'd never stopped. The regret gnawed at him, a constant reminder of the unease that now filled the car. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, hoping the journey would end soon. Jack slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding in his chest. The night was eerily silent, save for the sound of his own heavy breathing. He had been driving for hours, the road stretching endlessly before him, when the unthinkable happened. He had looked away for a split second, his eyes drawn to a blinking light in his rearview mirror. It was just a momentary distraction, but it was enough. The light seemed to pulse with an almost hypnotic rhythm, drawing his attention away from the road ahead. When he looked back, the woman was gone. She had been sitting right there in the passenger seat just moments before. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing, or rather, what he wasn't seeing. Vanished. He whipped his head around, searching the empty passenger seat. His blood ran cold. How could she have disappeared so suddenly, so completely? He felt a chill run down his spine, his breath visible in the cold night air. It was like she had never even been there. The seatbelt was still fastened, but there was no sign of her, no trace that she had ever existed. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. He checked the door, but it was still locked. There was no way she could have gotten out without him noticing. He tried to rationalize it, but nothing made sense. The door was secure, the windows were up, and yet she was gone. He scrambled out of the cab, frantically searching the side of the road. There was nothing, no sign of her anywhere. The snow-covered ground was undisturbed, as if no one had been there at all. No footprints in the snow, no sign of the woman in the red coat. It was as if she had been a ghost, a figment of his imagination. But he knew she had been real. He had spoken to her, heard her voice. Just then, he saw the lights of a gas station in the distance, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Maybe someone there had seen her. Maybe they could help him make sense of this. He had to tell someone. He had to find out if he was losing his mind, or if something truly inexplicable had happened. He had to know if he was going crazy. The fear and confusion gnawed at him, driving him towards the gas station, desperate for answers. The gas station attendant, a burly man named Dale, listened patiently to Jack's story. He didn't laugh or scoff, but a knowing look crept into his eyes. When Jack was finished, Dale took a drag from his cigarette and let out a long plume of smoke. "You picked up the Red Lady," he said, his voice low and grave. "The Red Lady?" Jack echoed, his voice barely a whisper. Dale nodded. "There's a story around these parts about a young woman who froze to death on this highway years ago. Christmas Eve it was. They say she was wearing a red coat. Some folks say she's still out there hitchhiking, looking for a ride she'll never take." Jack never forgot that Christmas Eve. The image of the woman in the red coat, her silent plea for help, was seared into his memory. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had encountered something truly unexplainable. From that day forward, Jack made it a tradition. Every Christmas Eve he would leave a thermos of hot coffee and a warm blanket in the passenger seat of his truck. A small token of kindness for a lost soul. A way to honor the memory of the Red Lady. He knew it wouldn't bring her back, but it offered him a sliver of peace. Dale told Jack the Red Lady's story. Her name was Mary, and she was on her way to see her fiancé for Christmas all those years ago. Her car had broken down in the middle of a blizzard, and she had set out on foot to find help. She never made it. Her fiancé waited for her, his heart filled with hope that slowly turned to despair. He never stopped looking for her, even after the search parties had given up. Some say he died of a broken heart, still searching for his lost love. The story haunted Jack. He couldn't help but think about Mary, alone and afraid in the cold. He imagined her desperation, her fading hope as the snow fell around her. He wondered if she found any peace after death, or if she was still searching for her fiancé, forever lost on that lonely stretch of highway. He started asking other truckers if they had ever seen the Red Lady. Some dismissed his questions, but others shared their own chilling encounters. A fleeting glimpse in their rearview mirror, a cold spot in the cab, whispers on the wind. The stories all shared a common thread. The Red Lady was a harbinger of tragedy, a warning to turn back, to stay off the roads on Christmas Eve. She was a chilling reminder that some things are best left undisturbed, that the open road, for all its freedom and allure, could also hold secrets best left buried in the snow. And so the legend lived on. Passed down from trucker to trucker, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones at truck stops and rest areas. A chilling reminder that even on the loneliest roads, you are never truly alone, and that some passengers are best left undisturbed.